Welcome to Limitless You, the podcast that empowers you to tap into your extraordinary potential. I'm your host, Taryn Dube, and I am thrilled to embark on this journey called You. Hello, everybody. I am so excited to welcome you here to Limitless You this week. And I have a wonderful guest with us this week. Priscah and I go way back into Zimbabwe days when I was living in Zim. And we have a lot of unspoken history, but yeah, just a lot of connections. And I just love hearing what she is passionate about and what she is doing in her community, and not just her community, but Africa as a continent as a whole and people that are there. So I just want to welcome you, Priscah. Welcome to Limitless You podcast. Thank you for giving me your time. And I'm excited about what we're going to be chatting about today.
Well, thank you so much, Taryn. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me to your platform. And it's excellent to actually connect again.
It is.
Even though it's different continents, different time. But yeah, it's amazing how God always brings people back together.
Completely. I agree with that 100%. So I have been watching you. We in similar WhatsApp groups, and I've been watching you on LinkedIn, and I always see you popping up doing lots of trainings and teaching and impacting into people's lives. But before we get into that, maybe you could just share with our listeners today, give us a nutshell of what it is you do and how you got there.
I have done a lot of things. And when I speak about my journey and the many transitions I've done in my career, people sort of raise an eyebrow and they're like, do you quite know what you're doing? And for a long time, I think I was intimidated by that. I felt that there was something wrong with me because I just settled on something. But I've actually realized that through that journey, God was weaving a thread that makes sense for me. And along the way, I was picking up different skill sets and translating those skill sets in new ways in different places. So when I left school, I went to medical school, graduated as a doctor, and worked in that scene for about 6 years.
Wow.
And then stopped. Many reasons. I used children as an excuse, but it was an excuse that society would accept. But I think in my heart, I knew that I needed a break. There were things that I wanted to learn that I knew I wouldn't be able to learn within that field. And so I wanted to step away from it. And so I left, stopped practicing, started looking after my kids, and started business. The first one was a complete flop. I had no idea what I was doing. It was,
It's anybody's first business, like a raving success.
I went into it. I'd read lots of books, and so I thought I knew everything. And I got badly burnt, lost a lot of money, injured my self-confidence significantly. And then had to really sit down and think, okay, how do I get back? How do I get back up? Going back to medicine wasn't an option because I'd really closed that door. I think part of the reason why I left actually was because we'd had our son, our oldest son, and I remember looking at him as a baby and thinking, okay, I love this little bundle so much, and I want the best for him. I want to see him succeed. But also realizing that success wasn't a guarantee. With the way that the world is structured, certain people who do certain things are more likely to get access to what the world would term success. And so I remember having a conversation with my husband, Simba, and saying to him, you know what, we've done pretty well academically, professionally. And if our child grows up to be like us, if he is an academic and wants to become a professional, we know how to mentor him. But if he decides he wants to go into business, we have no clue. We have no clue how to help him get there. And we don't have
Yeah.
anyone in our networks really who can be that. And so that was one of the reasons that kept me on track in terms of, okay, my first business has been an absolute mess. And I've learned that I know nothing despite all the reading. But I couldn't stop because the child was still there. In fact, now there were 3.
Now there were more.
Now there were more of them.
Yeah.
And so I'm not one to give up. So I was like, okay, we need to crack this. We need to crack the code.
So, Priscah, you've just mentioned about, cracking the code of success. And I know in Zimbabwe, like, I actually had no idea that you were a doctor. I totally missed that piece of information. I just remember when we met you, you and Simba were full-on entrepreneurs, like Anthony and I at the time. I think that's how we met, was through like business forums and connecting through business groups. And you just talked to me about cracking the code. How did you shift? Like, was there a mindset shift for you through hustling? Like, I know in Zim, there was a hustling, like needing to keep alive, needing to, make things happen. You've mentioned about how do we teach our son how to be successful in business because you had all the academia behind you. What was the shift for you of this isn't just a hustle, or like I'm not just figuring this out, to actual mindset of leadership and success?
I think from the get-go, I wanted to build something that would last. And I think that sort of defined my whole approach to business. It defined the sort of opportunities that I was willing to engage in. I think because of that, I never really developed hustle skills. I think hustle skills are quite peculiar. You need to be able to spot things really, really early and bring them to market and make your money and exit the market before everyone else gets there. And that just wasn't the skill set that I developed. So I've tried on a number of occasions to try and go there, and I've just realized that it's not me. I'm not built for it. And I think that's part of cracking the code, actually understanding what you're built for, understanding what you have an appetite for and what you don't, and being okay with walking away from opportunities that aren't for you. And so our mindset has always really been about building something that has legacy attached to it. And that was one of the things as well with professions, that it's all well and good for you, but it's not something that you can leave. I can't leave my medical certificate to my children and have to carry that on, but I can leave them a business. And so the whole aspect of legacy also determines the sort of decisions that you make as an entrepreneur in terms of how you're going to approach it. Not much legacy and hustle if it's not packaged as a business. And so I think that's something that one has to really get clear. And I understand that sometimes when you're trying to set up your business, you do need a hustle, something that's bringing you money, but it's good to be very clear about it and to be willing to let the hustle go when the business demands it, so that you can really grow the thing that matters. And I think particularly in Africa, legacy businesses are not something that we've been good at. We have a generation that will build something, but then that entity doesn't really make it to the next generation. When the person passes on, it's 3, 4, 5 years, and what they built has been torn apart because there was no mentorship of the next generation. There was no bringing in of the next generation to sort of learn the ropes and understand the vision and to really be a part of it. And so that's I think is what we were after. And it's defined our journey all along. It's really centered around our kids and just that biblical perspective of doing things that are generational, because God is a generational God. And so how do you have a vision as a couple that you can transfer to your children and have your children adopted as their own as well? but not confining them to, you have to do it the way mum and dad did it.
Yeah.
But for them to bring in their own flavor, and for us to also be willing to say, okay, we have run the race up to here. How do you guys see it panning out in your generation? Make sense of it, and bring it to life in the way that you can.
Yeah. So where did you seek mentorship from? I mean, you talk a lot about, you read and you thought you knew everything from the books that you had read. There was obviously, at your point of realizing that your first business had failed or not succeeded the way you wanted it to succeed. Where did you then seek mentorship from?
I think initially books were my first port of call, because like I mentioned, we didn't have people in our families or networks who were business owners. My family is all academic. My parents were both lecturers at a university. My aunts and uncles were teachers and nurses and engineers. So I didn't have people that I had seen grow a business. And on my husband's side, it's the same. His dad was a doctor, mom was a nurse, so very professional families.
Yes.
And so it meant we had to contend with a lot of what's the word I'm trying to use?
Resistance?
Yes, that's the word. That's nice and polite. Yes, resistance. People really thought we were crazy. How do two professionals who are doing well leave everything to go down this path that they don't know anything about? And then you mentioned how we cross path with yourself and Anthony through Christian business networks and things like that. So that was us looking for mentorship and looking for community and just wanting to connect with other people who were doing it so that we could learn, watch what they were doing and pick up what we could and share with them. And locally, I struggled. It's not, mentorship and coaching was not part of the culture.
Yes.
I'm starting to see it come up now. But when we started, which was mid 2000s, there wasn't anyone you could really speak to. And so, it was books. Internet wasn't really a thing back then. But after like 2010, when it became more widely available and there was YouTube, that helped. So a lot of my mentorship and coaching and all of that has really been just following people that I like, following people that I can learn from, shifting with seasons. So as the season changes and my needs change, I look for different people.
That's good.
Reading was big initially. But as kids grow and roles, responsibilities, all of that. So you end up doing the quick podcast or a YouTube video because you can do things like that on the go.
You can. Yeah. I just love that perspective, because what we're saying is that there really is no excuse not to learn. No. One of my coaches, and I'm so privileged to be part of the John Maxwell team. And so I have these incredible coaches that are part of that team. And Chris Robinson is always saying, get out the house, get out the house, get out the house. If we're sitting isolated in a space, one, we're not going to learn anything. But two, it's just mixing with other people. You mentioned about getting into, Christian business networks and other networks. Mixing with people shows us just what is possible, that we're not alone in the space. We're not trying to do it by ourselves. There are other people. John Maxwell often says, he's like, read everything you can, learn everything you can from the person that you consider your mentor, so reading his books, that sort of thing, until you can get to the table and sit at the table with that person. So I love that you and Simba were just so hungry for that knowledge and went out to find it, even when it wasn't as readily available as it is today. Like, there really is no excuse not to learn. I love your perspective of legacy for your children, but I know that legacy is so much more for you right now than just your family nucleus. Like, you are passionate about legacy for others within Zimbabwe and within Africa. Tell me tell me that part of your story. Like, what are you doing? How are you impacting people? And look at that smile. You're already like, okay, this is me. Like, this is where I
Yes.
get it. Your whole body language is like, yeah, let's get into this.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Africa.
Mm,
Yeah, I have such a heart for this continent, not just because it's my birthplace, it's home, but also because of the potential that I see, the narrative that I hear,
mm,
which does not align with that potential. And it's not just an external narrative. I think it's a narrative that we say to ourselves as well. I have this very big, bold vision for Africa and a desire to impact it, to bring Africa's people to a place where they can hold their own in this world, where families can look after their children and have the means to do it. They can have an understanding of how to tap into the resources that God has given us. It's a very blessed continent, and it does not
yes.
make sense that we are the way that we are. And so I think that's the thing that I'm grappling with. And so one of the things that I'm really passionate about, and that was a big part of my journey, was changing the way that I think and seeing how that had an impact on outcomes. And I
Oh,
think the Bible speaks about bringing every thought into captivity and having that ability to examine one's thoughts for truth and that ability to be renewed, like Romans 12 says. So going through that process and realizing that when your mind is transformed, then how
mm-hmm.
you see and how you act actually changes. And that's the message. I think in everything that I'm trying to do, it's looking for ways of changing how we think as a people. Because I think once you do that, no one can take things away from you. You can be stripped of everything, but as long as you have your mind, you
Yes.
can rebuild.
Yeah.
And so for me,
Come
that's the
on.
greatest gift that I can give people, the ability to think.
Come on.
And to think well. And so that's the message. In all that I'm talking about, it's really about mindsets, investigating how we're thinking and whether that thinking is actually leading to the outcomes that we want,
Yeah.
or it's pulling us away from the things that we actually desire. But what I've realized is I've been doing this with people. So as I was doing it myself, and I think it's been like a 10-15 year journey of really getting into Priscah's mind and figuring out how do I rein this powerful thing in that God has given me, and how do I make it conform to how He wants it to work. And it's hard. It's really, really hard. As I've been talking to people about things like this, they don't realize, when you talk about, oh, no, you need to have a mindset shift and you need to change the way you think. It sounds easy, but it is one of the hardest things to do.
It
And it's
is.
also one of the easiest things to give up on because it is so hard. And because you can get away with not doing it.
That's right.
If you don't do it, life will continue. It'll be uncomfortable. You won't have what you want, but you're not going to die. So it's easy to give up when you try it once or twice and you're like, no, this is not working, too uncomfortable, let me stop. And so when I talk to people, I always highlight that. I make them aware of the fact that if you're going to go on this journey, it is going to be very, very hard. You need to commit to the process, and you need to commit to looking at yourself and actually realizing that, oh my goodness, what have I been doing all these years?
I know. Oh my gosh. We could talk about this for hours. I love all things mindset. I am an absolute geek of. I absolutely love it. I started reading I don't know. It was 12, 13 years ago, Caroline Leaf, who switched, who turned off your brain, or who switched on your brain. I can't remember the title, but I just remember that's when I got introduced to thinking about being able to change just the awareness, right? Of, wait, I think this way, and I've never questioned that I think this way. I don't think, and I've always known scripture about taking every thought captive, and to be honest, I think I just put that in the context of temptation, I'm tempted by something, so I'm going to take this captive, instead of the context of every single part of my day, every single aspect that I approach, my parenting, how I approach my business, how I think about myself, how I think about my friends and other relationships. Like, obviously it seems obvious, but the actual outworking of it is a lot more difficult. Like you're saying, like it is a commitment, it is a discipline. And I find myself 12 years on, like you, just done so many mindset shifts of my own. And then there are times when I just kick back into 20-year-old Taryn or 15-year-old Taryn, and I'm like, what? Where did that come from? I liken it to in Canada, we drive on the other side, on the right-hand side of the road. And every now and again, I've been here for 10 years, but every now and again, I'll still go to the other side of the car looking for the steering wheel. Like, where did that come from? That's like, I think how our mind works too. It's like, it just, something happens and you just kick back into that old mindset. But it's that awareness of, oh, hang on a second, that just happened. That's not how I want to think. And I can reset that mindset. So we could talk, and we need to share books, like share some titles that you've been enjoying that I love as well. So Priscah, tell me specifically now, I know you love to do this. You are working with the Gateway Teachers Training College, which I think is incredible. So you're teaching young people who are becoming teachers, and you're also working with entrepreneurs and business owners. Tell me about those trainings. Like, what do you do? You've taken these passions. How are you impacting or like imparting these to other people?
When it comes to teaching, that's got a little bit of a backstory to it. Because my husband and I, in our journey with starting businesses and all of that, started one that was within the education space, with a focus on STEM literacy. So he's a computer science graduate, I'm medical, so STEM is our thing, it's our space. And it really pained us to see how so many kids were struggling with it, with something that we were so passionate about. And so we came up with a program that we were rolling out to parents who could come in on private subscription. And then we started having conversations with schools, but those conversations were a little bit difficult. It was something new. And as an outsider, really difficult for people to give you the time.
Yeah.
And so that's what then led me to get a qualification in education. So my master's is actually in education. Okay. And then I joined the college. I do work with pre-service teachers, so those are trainee teachers, and I also do a lot of work with in-service teachers. And my focus with the pre-service is thinking. So I talk a lot about thinking and about teaching them to investigate their own teaching so that in the classroom they can support learners and develop learners, teaching them how to think more effectively. On the in-service teacher side, I talk a lot about higher order thinking with them. So again, lots of thinking. So I talk about how to develop higher order thinking in students. We do a lot of professional development around STEM and how to teach STEM effectively. I have a passion for leadership, a lot of it because teachers really need support. They may know what to do, but without leadership support, it really becomes difficult for them to implement. So they may have good ideas, good things that they want to do with their students, but if there isn't leadership buy-in, it makes it really, really tough. Then on the entrepreneurship side, I did a fellowship with an amazing organization called AWEC, African Women's Entrepreneurship Cooperative, and they take in 200 women each year from across Africa, with businesses in Africa. So you can be an African woman in the diaspora, but as long as your business is in Africa, then you can join the program. Okay. And it's like doing a very practical MBA, very intense. It runs over 12 months and very practical. All the assignments are based on your business, and then once you complete the fellowship, you join the alumni network. And so currently we should be, I think this April we'll be on 1,400 women across Africa. So that's an amazing network of women to learn from. And it was through one of their initiatives that I actually broke into the space of business training. It's something I'd wanted to do. And so when they reached out to the alumni community and they said, we want to do this champions AWEC Champions community initiative where we equip you to go out and train other women. And the target was to train 100 women by the end of 2024. I signed up, did the training with them, and then came back to Zim and just started. It really felt like I was home. When I did that. It really, really did.
Wow.
It felt like I was right where I was supposed to be. And I had so many incredible women come through who were looking for help, looking for community. I was so happy that quite a number of them were ladies. So the training was focused at women. So we had to do 100 women. And I had quite a number who came in from the medical fraternity, which was great because I understand them. I understand being an academic and a clinician and not knowing how to run your surgery. I know that. Wow. It's a struggle that I can connect with. And so it was really incredible to feed back into the medical fraternity because it'll always be my first love. I loved medicine. I did it because I really enjoyed it. It wasn't a mistake. And so to be able to feed back into that community in that way has really been incredible. Wow. And so out of that came my LinkedIn journey because I was like, okay, we've started this. Let's take the conversation to a broader platform and let's see where it goes. I feel like things are starting to come together. Like the picture that has been almost like the threads that God has been weaving through my life are starting to form a picture that is cohesive, that makes sense.
I love that. It's so true to the saying, like, learn a little, do a little, learn a little, do a little. And you're doing that. And I love that you learn and then you're teaching others. I love the challenge of training 100 women in a year. That's fantastic. I'm like, oh, how can I get something like that going on this side? Because that is really impactful and empowering. Just all of this. I'm like, oh, I know somebody. I need to connect with you so that they can get involved with us. And that's just how my brain functions. But just seeing you connected with community, I think community is a large portion of how we become successful. Success doesn't happen in isolation and it doesn't happen in a bubble. But just hearing your story of community is a huge part of how we do find success. We need each other. And I think as women in Africa, because you are fighting so many other battles that are unseen or unspoken, whether it's stereotypes, cultural, whatever those things might be, access to resources. Together you have that ability to say, oh, I know this, I can connect you to this resource, or I can connect you to this training, or I can help be a thought leader in your business in that way. So I love that you brought that up. What about, so in your bio, in your description, you talk about being a futurist. What does that mean?
Yes. Oh, goodness. My other favorite topic. So when I was doing my master's program, in one of the modules, we're looking at just like educational planning. How do educational institutions plan? And the module was really open, which I loved about it. So you could go down a rabbit hole and just do a deep dive. And that's where I came across this concept called scenario planning, and these schools that were doing these plans 15, 20, 30 years into the future and then building their schools out that way. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is it. This is what we need as Africa, because we can't do 3-4 year plans because of the lag. There's so many things that we are behind on compared to the rest of the world. That if we don't change the way that we plan, the idea of catching up is a myth, especially now because there is so much change that's happening. We need to be more proactive in our planning and in our envisioning of the future and all of that. And so after my master's, I then went into trying to figure out what is this scenario planning, what is this strategic foresight, futures thinking field about, and pursued a certification in that. As I was going through it, I was like, oh, this is how Simba and I have always thought. And this is one of the reasons that we struggled with our businesses, because we were always 5-10 years ahead of the market. So
I know what you mean.
You're ahead of the market and you're going to people and like, can't you see it? Can't you see that this is happening?
You get some of that resistance again.
And everyone's like, no, nothing's changed. You're like, but things are changing.
They're
Change is
going
coming.
to change, yeah.
And you end up feeling, you can get discouraged. And I think we let go of a couple of businesses early because we were ahead of the market. And by the time the market caught up, we were tired. Foresight has helped us understand who we are and understand how to build, taking market into account, and how to have conversations with people so that you're not pulling them into the Star Trek worlds that they can't imagine.
That's
but
good.
You actually just take them through step by step. From a Christian perspective, the Bible talks about the sons of Issachar and how they understood the times.
Yeah. I actually think that was the name of the business forum that Anthony met you in Simba first.
Issachar. Yes. For me, strategic foresight fits into that, because I was like, Lord, these are the tools that are within foresight are the tools that can help people understand the times and understand what to do, because it's not enough to notice that there's change. We need to be able to decipher what that change means and what we need to do to act, to change or adapt. So that's been very, very exciting, because I see that as a huge tool to help Africa navigate out of where it is, to help it actually leapfrog. Because the tendency is for our technology and our solutions to be created by someone else, somewhere else, and then we get plugged into it. But that means we're always following behind, because by the time it comes...
I have heard that there's a bit of a dichotomy, because there are areas where Africa is behind, but then there's other areas where you've actually had to have innovation and are actually ahead. So, for example, the way you guys send money electronically is so much more ahead than what we have on the side of the world. Little things like that, like you have these innovative processes or things that are happening, but there's the gap between structure and infrastructure, and then allowing these things to actually take root and be established and create successful, long-lasting businesses. So I can imagine that there's that tension pool between those things.
There is. Also, in terms of green energy, it's every house in Harare has got solar. Yeah, so it's not unusual for us. And yet, you look at the rest of the world and they're talking about it and you're like, oh, okay, but we've already done that. We've already ticked those boxes. No one builds a house without thinking about being off-grid.
I know. We've actually had a couple of instances. There's been a couple of big snowstorms. And I was like, we really should be thinking about a generator. But that just feels so foreign now to think about. Where would we put it? How would we attach it to the house? And I'm like, even if the power went out, I don't even have enough candles in the house anymore to light up the house. But that was so much part of our thinking back then.
So I think there's definitely things that, because of the struggle of just living on the continent, we've had to adopt and innovate and move ahead in certain things. But when you look at things like the green energy, I feel we could do a lot more. The lithium is coming from our country, yet we don't make the batteries. We send the lithium out and then we bring back the batteries and we put up the solar. So it's looking at things like that and saying, okay, as a nation, as a continent, what do we really have? How do we take the tools of technology and bring them onto the continent and actually use those to set up manufacturing so that we can grow other aspects of our industry? Because we've got things that thrive and then we've got other things that are just not moving. Foresight for me is really about driving that. How can we actually start to create innovations rather than just be consumers of other people's innovations? How do we start using our own resources effectively, whether it's natural resources or humans, are the people that we have?
And are you talking about this into companies and organizations within Zimbabwe and Africa?
In the space that I'm working, so at the college, definitely, we do have those conversations. When I first started there, I started there in 2023. I was an interesting person to have because I think very differently. I wasn't coming from the traditional education background, and so very unconventional in my approach. And then, of course, with my focus on thinking and investigating, everyone's thinking, so why are you thinking like that? And is that the only way? And can it be done better? And let's check out this tool. I think it can help us. So the college has definitely benefited. Our own business has benefited within our networks. I'm using those platforms as well just to communicate. Recently, I've partnered with a friend to bring it into a bank. So that's been like the first formal step into bringing it into the corporate setting. Because of all the change that's happening, I'm hoping that people have ears that are willing to listen and to give some of these ideas a chance.
So Priscah, as we begin to wrap up, I love hearing your thinking and rethinking, and just how you want to impact the continent of Africa and the woman in Africa. What would you leave? Because we do have this whole podcast is solely focused on highlighting women and being able to share like what they do in their community and their spheres of influence. And so for the woman listening, what would you say to them is some wisdom for them to take away? So you've had 25 plus years of doing this, of, from your medical degree to being an entrepreneur to leading in education. What would you say is a really key anchor for women in leadership to hold on to so that they are not stuck with those stereotypes? They're not stuck with the resistance that they meet in the marketplace or in their families. What would you encourage them with?
I would say that I think the hardest work is to work on yourself and to really commit to doing that. Because once you have done that and you've won in that space, it won't matter what people say. It won't move you because you have that confidence and that peace within yourself that what you're doing is what you've been created to do. But it is so hard to convince you that this is right. So in my journey, that was the hardest work that I had to do. Just really working on myself and really convincing inner Priscah that you were right to make the decisions that you made. They were good decisions, and you're right to take the paths that you've taken. You heard God speak in that journey, and to be comfortable and confident in that. And now people can say what they want, and it doesn't rattle me as much as it did 15 years ago. A common thing when I'd meet people is like, "Oh, what are you up to now?" And that now at the end of it was just like, "Oh, a dagger to the heart." You're just unstable. You don't know what you're doing. But now people say that, and I just laugh and I tell them, no, I'm out there changing the world, doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm okay with that. You can understand it, or you can choose not to understand it. It doesn't change what I'm going to do or what I think about myself.
That's good.
But that comes from really doing that work within yourself and finding that place of knowing that this is who I am and this is what God has called me to do and to be. And I can't apologize for that.
I love that. I love that so much. Well, I'm definitely going to have your LinkedIn profile in the blurb below so people can connect with you. I know that this is an opportunity for the woman in my sphere, which crosses over North America and Africa and a little bit of Europe, to find you for innovative training and leadership training, rethinking training, and also just, getting the woman in Africa in particular into communities that you are part of, so that we can be moving this tidal wave of incredible minds to bring change and impact onto the most beautiful continent. It is definitely home, and it is definitely the most precious of continents in this entire world. I know we're biased, but that's what we think.
We're biased, super biased. It's home.
So, Priscah, thank you so much for your time, and just blessing us with everything that you've said today. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. All right. Well, next week there's another great guest that I will be having. I look forward to seeing you there. And Priscah, thank you once again. Anybody who wants to connect, check in the link below, and we will see you soon.